The topic today really is not in NEPA. Some of us maybe have thought that, some of us maybe have talked about it, some of us may have had that concept, and really we have been told, I have been personally told, that you can't do what you're going to do in Northeast Pennsylvania. And my question is, why not Northeast Pennsylvania? Why not here? Since moving to Northeast Pennsylvania, I grew up in Palmerton down in the Lehigh Valley, but since moving here, I will tell you that I have met some of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. I have met some of the most innovative and influential leaders. I have met some of the greatest business people, some of the great leaders of organizations. I have just met great people everywhere. And so the question is not in NEPA, but why not in NEPA? And that's what we need to do. My journey starts all the way back in 10th grade. In 10th grade, in order for me to share with you kind of a concept in the journey of leadership innovation that we've had at Camp Freedom, which is what I'm going to share with you, I back up to 10th grade. I had a teacher, Mrs. Hoffman, Betty Hoffman. She had green hair, by the way. I'll still hold to that. However, Mrs. Hoffman was my Spanish teacher. And in 10th grade, I was ranked 7th in my class. I had all straight A's, a 4.0. We couldn't get higher than that back in that time frame. But a 4.0, everything was wonderful. And I was up for National Honor Society, and Mrs. Hoffman decided that I spoke too much, and at times I was a bit disagreeable, both of which were true. But because of that, she decided to say that I can't be in National Honor Society, and she got another teacher to agree with her. And then she told me, you will never be anything, in 10th grade, from a Spanish teacher. Then in 12th grade, I was playing football. I played quarterback and linebacker at Palmerton High School, and I really wanted to play football in college. I loved football. My dad's a 40-plus year high school coach, so I grew up around the sport, loved it, and I was told in my senior year that there's no way that you can play ball in college. It won't happen. I was told by my peers. I was told by adults who were observing and watching. And I went to Dickinson College in Carlisle and was there recruited by a coach in his first year. So that's always a great scenario to be in. And in 42 college games, I was able to start 39 college games, was able to be first team all league in my senior year. And more importantly, we were 34-6-2. But again, I was told, you can't do that. You can't do that. As a junior in college, I was in the ROTC program. I was on an ROTC scholarship, and my battalion commander, who was a colonel in the Army, literally told me, he said, Matt, he said, you're not serious enough about the Army, and you're never going to amount to anything. Maybe you should just go in the reserves, which also showed a lack of understanding of what the reserves are and the regular Army are in his mindset. However, he told me, you're never going to be able to do anything, and you'll never be successful in the Army. And so my junior year, I went to an advanced camp that you go to, and I went to the first week, which is supposed to be the most grueling. It's a 2-week program. I went to the first session, and I called Sergeant Randall upon graduation. I graduated number 1 in the battalion, which meant you had choice of any MOS you want. He told the colonel, he ran around our building, our ROTC building, yelling, told the colonel, and the colonel said he'll still amount to nothing. And so that was what I was up against when people were telling me all the time that you can't do certain things. So when we decided to plant Camp Freedom in the middle of Northeast Pennsylvania, I was told, you cannot build a national organization in Northeast Pennsylvania. It won't happen. It won't work. I was told there's no way you can hold an event in Carbondale that will be a great event, and we've held 4 of those. And we had a lot of naysayers saying you just can't do that, and you can't build something like you plan on building in Northeast Pennsylvania. And so the framework of building Camp Freedom, the journey of Camp Freedom in the context of leadership, innovation, and I would add, and inspiration, is the story. And let me tell you a little bit about it. And I'm not used to staying still, so I like moving, but I'm trying to do my best to stay here on this mic. In 2018, January 1st, we started Camp Freedom. That fall, we made an aggressive decision to bring in guests. And we weren't ready to bring in guests, but we knew this. We knew we could love people. We knew we could care for people. We knew we could honor people. And we knew we could tell people the value that they truly hold in life. And so we brought 49 guests in that first fall in 2018. And that fall absolutely changed my life. not only did it change their lives, it changed my life. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Year 2, first full year of operation, we had 700 guests at Camp Freedom. Year 3, 1,400 guests. Year 4, we had 2,100 guests. Last year, we had 2,600 guests at Camp Freedom. And so in just 5 years, we've had over 6,300 guests, disabled veterans, disabled first responders, their family members, and Gold Star families on our grounds from 40 different states. From 40 different states in just 5 years. And we've been able to continue to grow that and move that. But that first year, one of those 49 guests, his name was Kyle Jones. And Kyle came to Camp Freedom, a disabled Navy veteran, showed up, had a concept for a Jeep event, was trying to get me to buy into the Jeep event he wanted to do. I noticed he was struggling. Long story short is I got to know Kyle. He came back the next day. We spent time together, and I recognized that he had an opioid addiction, talked to him about it. He agreed to stay at Camp Freedom, locked down for 60 days, which he did. But 2 weeks after he started his stay, I was being interviewed by somebody from the Times Leader, and they said, "Hey, do you have a guest here?" Well, Kyle was the only one in the building. I said, "Yeah, Kyle's here. Kyle, you want to talk to this gentleman?" Kyle came over, and then he said this, and this was life-changing. He said, 3 days before I came to Camp Freedom, I had a loaded pistol in my mouth. And that's a horrific statement, one that I've heard far, 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 far too many times. But then he said this. He said, "And I even failed at that." That was a life change moment for me because I started to see a pattern in those first 49 guests, and that pattern was isolation. Our vets and first responders, after suffering trauma and transition, often isolate. And so it's isolation, add in drugs and or alcohol, and then it leads to desperation every time. But I didn't understand the depth of the desperation until Kyle made that statement. And when he made that statement, it made me understand just how deep, just how dark it can really get. And I even failed at that. The greatest decision he ever made in his life, not to pull the trigger, he viewed as a failure. And so that set a course of action for us in this journey. That reshaped in my mindset the leadership that would be necessary and the training that would be necessary for our staff and our volunteers at Camp Freedom. And so we enacted a plan with 3 counteractions to that isolation, drugs and alcohol, and desperation. We intervene with peer-to-peer interaction. We intervene with camaraderie. Once you spend enough time together, you will build a relationship of trust. Once you have a relationship of trust, it'll turn into camaraderie. And if you ever talk to a veteran, you'll hear the term camaraderie come up almost immediately when they talk about what they miss in the military. When you talk to somebody in law enforcement, they will talk about camaraderie. When you run towards danger together, you will talk about camaraderie. And we combine it with an outdoor adventure. It's not complicated. We hike, bike, walk, fish, hunt, shoot, cross-country ski, snowshoe. We do all these great activities, but we do it in a very specific way. I have a staff of only 8 individuals to run 2,350 acres, $1 million of equipment, and everything it takes to run that. We're a staff of only 8. It's a very committed staff, but we've created a culture of care. We've created at Camp Freedom a culture of others first. And when I talk about culture, I know it's kind of pop today to talk about culture, and everybody wants to talk about culture, but we really have made a plan and put a plan in place to create a culture where we consider all others better than ourselves, where we care for others first, where we put others first, where we serve others first, and it's unique and it's special, and our entire staff has created a legitimate culture, not just verbiage of culture. And it's a whatever it takes attitude. Our staff lives with whatever it takes. I tell them every morning when we gather, I tell them today may be the difference between life or death for a guest that's at Camp Freedom. And that's how serious it is every day. And so we've created this culture of care, and care is first. When I was in the Army, they used to say people first, mission always. The reality is this, it was only mission always. That was my experience. It was mission always. It was not people first. But we are really trying to build an atmosphere where it's people first, and it is truly mission always. And our numbers, those great, incredible metrics, and I love metrics, and donors always want to know about metrics, and people in the grant world want to know about metrics, but metrics only tell part of the story. Those numbers are great, 6,300 guests served, but they're only as great as the care they received. And we are never going to be dictated at Camp Freedom by a metric. We will continue to grow, and we are growing this year again. We'll continue to grow, but we'll only continue to grow at the level that we can provide excellent care. And if that number pushes us to a point where we can't provide excellent care, we will pull that number back, because care is the centerpiece of all that we do. So our staff is bought full in. They will tell you that Camp Freedom is their organization. They will tell you that it's their company. They will tell you that it's their much more than a job, because it is. Because it has become their lifestyle. And it's become their lifestyle because we have created that culture for everybody to soar and for everybody to literally be all that they can be, stealing that from the Army, of course, but literally where they can be and where they're encouraged to be and where they're set free in order to be that. In 2021, we had 7,000 hours of volunteer hours, 7,000 hours recorded of volunteer hours at Camp Freedom. Last year, we had over 10,700 hours of volunteer hours recorded at Camp Freedom. And what we do is simple. We invite people to come. This morning we had a breakfast. It's a networking breakfast, informational breakfast. We had 39 people show up. Of those 39 people, I hope that 5 to 7 of them will come back and visit again. So they come and see and learn, then they come and see and do, and then once they start doing, they do more. They recognize that in serving others, they're actually being served, and it becomes a part of the fabric of the makeup of who they are, and all of a sudden, they have a lifestyle of Camp Freedom. And it becomes a part of all that they do. And I hear it because I hear them talk about it. I hear them share about it. I hear them express with gratitude the experiences that they have at Camp Freedom. And that's what we've done with our volunteers. I think of a guy named Fred. Fred comes to Camp Freedom every day. He's a Coast Guard veteran, and he shows up at Camp Freedom 7:30 in the morning every single day, 5 days a week. And he stays there till 3:30 like it's his job, and he's a volunteer. And he does it every day. Every single day. I did not have the foresight to see that volunteering was going to be a part of care for so many individuals as it is. And Fred does it every day. I think of a guy, Joe Wahai and Ted Kessler and Steve Gallone and Jim Kuzmak. These are all guys who serve locally as first responders, and they volunteer at everything that we do. And then I'm here today because one of our board members, our board of trustees, and actually their board of servant members, Tim McMullen, sitting in the back, Tim invited me, introduced me to Don, and then I was able to share with you today this story. And again, it's because everybody at Camp Freedom has a servant mentality. So let me talk to you about the value of a relationship. We all know you all are innovative in your leadership. You're here because you want to challenge yourself, you want to grow, you want to move forward. We all know that life is all about relationships. It always has been, and it always will be. And leadership, therefore, is all about relationships. And I want to share with you about a couple key relationships that I've experienced at Camp Freedom. Some of you may be familiar with a local guy named Chuck Cocadrilli. Chuck passed away a little over a year ago. When I moved up here, and when we started Camp Freedom on January 1st of 2018, I just went and started introducing myself to people, to local businesses, to anybody I could get in front of and talk to, I talked to. And I would always hear, well, you're not from here. It's like, well, I'm just down the road. I'm just an hour down the road, but you're not from here. And I couldn't break into relationships. And all of a sudden, Chucky shows up, and Chucky takes me and starts introducing me to people everywhere. Literally introduced me to hundreds of individuals over those first 4 years of Camp Freedom. And he would introduce me to people, and then they would start introducing me to people. They trusted me because they trusted Chuck. And so that introduction, that relationship carved the way. One of the people that I met through Chuck was Rob Grimm Construction. Some of you may be familiar with it. Rob has since introduced me to hundreds of people in his network. And Rob and I have become great friends. We share life together, and Rob and his entire family have a lifestyle that is built around Camp Freedom. One of the people he introduced me to is Mike Cabbage, Pioneer Construction. And now Mike Cabbage is introducing me regularly to all of the people in his life and to hundreds of people. Tim McMullen, and sitting in the back of the room. By the way, have you ever noticed that Tim McMullen is always the best dressed person in the room? Perfectly pressed, always. So Tim does not hunt. Tim does not fish. I don't think Tim gets dirty. Okay, I'm just going to say that. However, Tim has been one of the most instrumental people in my life and in the life of Camp Freedom because he introduces me to everybody, and everybody he introduces me to is great people. And I know they're great people because he has introduced me to them. So I trust that from day one. Life is all about relationships. Bill DeRozier sitting right here in the front and center. Bill has introduced me in a very short window of time to probably more people than all of them combined. And he just keeps introducing me to more and more quality people. And so that's nothing new. We know that it's all about relationships. Life is and leadership is. So how do we as leaders be innovative and be people-centric, relationship-centric, and in my world and in my life, others-first-centric in all of our decision-making, in all of our leadership? And it comes back to the principle of risk versus reward. Risk versus reward. Many times in life, people tell you can't do things. I shared with you just a few brief stories. I have many more that I could share, where they say you're not going to be able to do that. And sometimes they're right. Sometimes somebody observes something and says you're not going to be able to do that, and they're just right. And sometimes they're not. And sometimes we get controlled by what others say. And we need to learn to think outside of that box and think about how can we be a leader in all areas of our life. Some people say you can't do stuff just because of jealousy and envy. It's as simple as that. They say you can't do it. There's an issue of jealousy, an issue of envy, whatever it is. And let's say it's not that. Sometimes it's just people's perspective. We're all made differently. We're all made uniquely. And sometimes we can't see what others can see. Sometimes it's people just puffing themselves up by putting others down. Sometimes it's not more complicated than that. And that happens often in our culture. But there's only a small percentage of people who can see past a large risk in front of them to see the huge reward that will be on the back end of the hard work, the dedication, and the whatever it takes attitude to drive you to completion of the task at hand. And as an innovative startup kind of leader, there's some things that we must be able to assess. There's some things that we must be able to evaluate. And for me, every success I've had in life starts with a very similar pattern. It all starts with a dream. And we need to be free to dream big. And I want to say to those of you that are leading others, we need to let our people dream big. We need to recognize the value of letting our staff, our team, our people, our volunteers, our workers, letting them dream big. But we can't stay in dream mode. Because when you stay in dream mode, nothing gets accomplished. And so we dream big, but we assess in reality. So we must dream big, and then we must assess the situation in the reality of the situation. And then we must plan thoroughly, but we must plan with flexibility. We must plan with flexibility. And we must also go forward with flexibility. And then we must execute the plan. I see you back there, Don. And then we must execute the plan. And we have to execute the plan with diligence. And there's nothing new there. But here's where it gets a little different. Here's where it gets a little different. We need to do this with a people-first attitude. We need to do this with a serve others first attitude. We need to do this with an honor others first attitude and mentality and practice. And so often we don't. By building others up, and by investing in others' lives, we can create a culture of team, a culture of family, and a culture where it becomes their vision, their company, their mission, their lifestyle. And you know who benefits? Whoever it is that you're serving as an organization or a company. Because you will be better as a team in that format. But you need to do it with caring flexibility. With caring flexibility. Early in my work life, career life, I couldn't balance production with relational investment. In fact, frankly, I didn't care about relational investment. I cared about production. I'm a driven guy. I just wanted production. And as I went through different opportunities in life, I recognized that I need to balance relational investment with production. And if I learn to do that and invest in people, if I learn that I need to have people around me who are better than me, who will be better than me, who will do more than me, who can become more than me, and who will excel past me, when I stop being threatened by their success and what they'll do, and I start actually encouraging it, we will create an atmosphere where they can see their ultimate success goals in life and where they can soar, and sometimes they will soar out of the nest that I'm in. And guess what? It's a good thing, because they'll end up right where they're supposed to be. And so I've learned to surround myself with people. I've learned with people that can do more than me. I've learned to let people soar and encourage it and create an atmosphere where it happens. And I heard a long time ago, someone said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's true. But when you start balancing work production with relational investment, things get cloudy sometimes, because the relationship becomes vested. It becomes personal. It becomes real. We get involved in each other's families' lives. Sometimes the lines get a little cloudy. But even with all of that that comes with it, I will tell you that you will find yourself, your team, your mission, your company, your organization in a better place because of investing in people and investing in relationship. So here's what I've learned in my life. I haven't learned a lot of things, and I want to keep learning till the day I die, but I've learned this. I can lead from the front while serving from the bottom or from below. I can care from alongside, and culture will always take care of itself. It will always take care of itself. So one last thing I want to share with you, and I think it's one of the more valuable things that I've ever learned in being innovative in leadership, trying to be inspirational in leadership, is we have to own our junk. As leaders, we have to learn to say, I blew it. I'm sorry, I made a bad decision. You know what? You were right. I should have listened to you. Those kind of things make us real when we're in a leadership role to those we're leading. It builds that relational value, that relational stock, and people excel in that environment. The reality is what's happened at Camp Freedom is absolutely amazing in just over 5 years. And I give God all the glory for what he's done, because there's no one of us that ever could have taken credit for the things that have happened in this short span of time. And there's 3 things that I need from you as you contemplate Camp Freedom. First of all, take a look at Camp Freedom. You can go to campfreedompa.org and see what we're doing, because we have a national organization right here in Northeast Pennsylvania that is blowing the doors off of it, and we are seeing lives rescued on a daily basis, and I need you involved. Because with just 8 staff members, I need volunteers on a daily basis. So whatever your skill set is, whatever your organization is, whatever your business is, we need help, and we need you to come and volunteer. I need material items. A few years ago, Pocono Raceway supplied all of our paper goods for an entire year. That means I didn't have to spend money on paper goods, and that meant that our money went to the mission. And by the way, last year we raised $1.3 million, and we did so at a 5.3% administrative cost, which is lean and mean, especially when you own ground and own equipment. And then the last thing, of course, we always need financial support. And so if you can do that, we have everything from a $9.99 a month give all the way up to naming rights for the whole property. So just letting you know. I learned from hospitals. Why not learn from the best? So here's the reality, folks. Thank you for the time. We need to be innovative in our leadership. We need to be innovative and inspirational in our approach to people that we care for, people that we serve, people that work for us. And we need to understand that we are in one of the best places in the entire United States. So why not here, and why not now? Thank you.